evening, guys, and welcome to our Midleton tasting. Very, very sorry for the delay. Apologies about that. We had some technical difficulties with the sound. We've had a couple of hitches today, to say the least, but we got there in the end. So, welcome to our Midleton tasting. My name is Joe. I'm the Prestige Irish Whiskey Developer for a company called Distiller Bass. So I look after our premium whiskey training and tasting events, working really closely with the trade, bars and bartenders and retailers, basically to talk about Irish whiskey. So really delighted to be involved with the Belfast Whisky Week for the third year in a row. So I've done quite a few tastings. This isn't my last one today. I've got another one later on this evening, but we're almost at the end of them now. So this will be the last tasting where I have these very special guests with me. So with me I have Kevin O Gorman and Finn Barkern. If you guys want to just introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about your roles.
Absolutely. Yeah, so Finn Barkern's my name. My role is Wood Planning and Maturation Team Lead. I have the privilege of working very closely with Kevin O Gorman and the blending team in Midleton Distilleries. I suppose really to kind of capture what I do, it's really trying to source wood from all over the world, and it's basically for all the casks that we use in Midleton Distillery. I get the joyous role of trying to source all those, which is probably one of the best roles aside from Master Distiller Mr. O Gorman over here, but it's definitely one of the best roles in the place.
Yeah, hello everybody. So yeah, apologies again for the delay. I hope you've all held on to your samples and you haven't downed them already. So yeah, my name is Kevin O Gorman, the Master Distiller at Midleton Distillery. It's great to be here this evening to present these whiskies. I suppose Midleton Distillery, I suppose just to give a little bit of history, it was set up in 1825 by the Murphy family. Midleton is located about maybe 10-15 miles from Cork City, which is in the south of Ireland. It's a small to medium-sized town, Midleton, but I suppose there's a few important things about Midleton, and the reason why the Murphy family set up the distillery initially in Midleton. So number one is that there's a beautiful river flowing through the town called Dungorney River, and the Dungorney really was a very important water supply for the distillery back in 1825, and it also was an important source of power to power the Great Water Wheel, which is actually still there to this day. And then I suppose the second important factor why Murphy's picked the Midleton area was I suppose the supply of barley and malted barley from that region in Munster and Leinster. It's called the Golden Vale of Munster because of the quality of the land, which produces top class barley, which is so important to our operation. So the Murphys set it up in 1825, and it continued through the ages. The old distillery shut down in 1975, and then the new distillery was commissioned and set up. And to this day, the old distillery is still there. The old pot stills are still there. The worm tub, the largest pot still in the world, about 144,000 bulk litres, is still there to this day, and people can visit and tour there. But it's a silent distillery now, and it doesn't work anymore. And all the action happens over the wall in what we call the new distillery, but it's there since 1975. So a very special place. I think Finn will agree. It's just a wonderful place to work, and it's a privilege for me to be here this evening to present these whiskies. So that's Midleton. So maybe, Joe, the sequence of events if people want to get their whiskies lined up.
Just to give you the heads up, first of all, thanks to the people putting in some comments already in the chat. If anyone isn't already, just to let you know, if you have any questions, comments, feedback, or anything like that, please just fire it into the chat. I'm keeping an eye on it. We have slightly changed the running order, so you'll notice the numbers in each of your bottles, but we're not going to be going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're actually going to be going in an order of 5, 6, 1, 4, 2, 3. 5, 6, 1, 4, 2, 3. And we will call out each one as we're doing it, just in case you pre-pour, you don't get mixed up, as we almost did when we were getting the samples, or rather I did. So yeah, basically we're going to be kicking things off with our first whiskey. So we actually have a pretty interesting one here. This is a component of MVR. Yeah,
so maybe just to kick things off, I'll just talk about the Midleton brand to start with. So within the Midleton family, the Midleton brand, we have a number of whiskies. Midleton Very Rare, which was brought out initially in 1984 by Barry Crockett, the then master distiller. Again, I suppose a very, very special whiskey, Midleton Very Rare. It's the pinnacle of Irish whiskey in terms of quality and craftsmanship. Then within the family as well, we have Barry Crockett Legacy, which is a whiskey that was dedicated to Barry Crockett. He got his name on the bottle. It's a wonderful whiskey, and we'll talk about that later on as well. And then we also, a number of years ago, added the Midleton Dark Wheelock, which is Irish oak, to the Midleton family as well. And that's at cask strength, and we're going to have a look at that as well. So that's the Midleton family. You have Midleton Very Rare, you have Barry Crockett Legacy, and then you have Midleton Dark Wheelock. So a wonderful array of whiskies, incredible quality and craft, and we spend, I suppose we're very proud of the whole brand. We spend a lot of time working on it. So maybe the first one I'll look at is Midleton Very Rare, and we've sample number 5, okay? So just to really confuse people, we said we throw around all the numbers, so keep you on your toes. But anyway, so there's a reason why we build up to this. So we're going to look at the 2 components, and this is 2 of over 10 components that go into Midleton Very Rare 21. We're going to look at 2 components first of all, then we're going to look at Midleton Rare 21. So I'm going to look at these 3 whiskies with you. So first of all, to give a bit of context to Midleton Very Rare, as I said already, it was launched in 1984. A few, I suppose, important things about Midleton Very Rare. First of all, it's all American oak barrels. It's all American bourbon. And I suppose the reason for that was, back in 1984 when Barry launched the whiskey, he really was a big fan of American oak and the flavour profile that it gives. So to this day, it remains all American oak. And I suppose that's one of the key features of Midleton Very Rare. The second thing is that it's a blend. So it's a blend of grain whiskey and pot whiskey. And the third thing is then it's a range of different ages. So from year to year, we play around with a number of different components. The composition of grain versus pot. We change around the age profile, and we also look at the first fill, second fill, and third fill barrels, and I'll explain that in a minute as well. So we have the opportunity to play around with different components, different variables, to give a vintage every single year, and that'll become more clear as we go through the tasting. So let's have a look at our first sample, which is number 5. And what we have here is a sample. This is cask strength, so it's straight from the cask. This is grain whiskey from 1994. Okay, so this is one of the components that I put into the Midleton Very Rare 21 this year. I just picked this as an example of, I suppose, a beautiful grain whiskey. It's from an American barrel. It's a first fill American barrel. And just to explain that first fill, so when we get in barrels from America, these American bourbon barrels, they have been seasoned already with bourbon in America. They're emptied. They're then sourced by a number of cooperages in Kentucky, and then we bring them to Ireland and we fill them with our whiskey. A B1 is the first time we fill that cask. That's what we call a B1. It's a first fill. It's the first time that we use that cask. A B2 is a second fill. That's our second time using it. And a B3 is a third fill. And after that, then we sell off the cask. So this example here is a grain whiskey in a first fill B1 cask. Okay? So 1994, grain whiskey. The whiskey itself, the cereal mix, is a mixture of maize and malted barley. It's triple distilled in column stills. These are large vertical columns. The distillate comes off at about 94% alcohol. And it gives a lovely, elegant, slightly fruity, a little bit of floral notes coming off that new distillate. It's very, very distinctive, very elegant. We then reduce it in strength down to about 70% with water, and then we fill it into the cask, and then it goes off to the warehouse to mature. And this one here has been there since 1984. So we just have a nose. And I'm a huge fan of grain whiskey in American oak. I think it's just has so much to offer. So this one, I mentioned earlier on about the sort of the floral note and the elegance of a grain whiskey. So here what you have is, I pick up from the American oak the touch of vanilla, fudge, bit of toffee, but you also have that sort of kind of a floral, maybe slightly rose petal note coming through. And then you have a touch of, I call it zesty lime, maybe a bit of citrus.
For me, it's almost like fresh lemon.
There's a bit of lemon peel. Yeah, it's kind of citrus, bit of lemon peel. So very, very distinctive, the grain whiskey. Yeah. So we'll just have a taste. So this is cask strength. So it's a roughly 56, 57% thereabouts. Just have a staunch it. So if you like grain whiskey, I do get that touch of maybe toffee, caramel. It's there, sweetness. It's quite. There's a little touch of sweetness there. You can pick that sweetness.
Butterscotch on the finish.
Butterscotch. Touch of fruit as well. That citrus that comes through in the nose also comes through on the taste. Maybe a bit of kiwi, orange peel, a little touch of banana as well. So grain whiskey, and I suppose the joy of putting together a Midleton Very Rare for me every year now, from now on, will be I get to pick the very best of, you know, these casks in Midleton. So that's the single grain, okay, 1994.
It must be pretty exciting to have your name on the bottle now.
It is, yeah. It was a tremendous honour last year, and to be honest, it was an incredible occasion just to, you know, produce the first bottle of Midleton Very Rare 21. And I remember I was presented with the bottle down in Midleton, and it was a very, very special occasion, I have to say. Yeah. Okay, so the second component of the Midleton Very Rare 21, which we're building up to, is a pot, single pot still. So what we have here in sample number 6. We have a 2002, so this was distilled back in 2002. It's a single pot still, so it's made from a cereal mix of malted barley and unmalted barley, triple distilled in copper pot stills, and then filled into American oak barrels. And once again, these are B1 first fill American oak. So this grain is a grain whiskey in a first fill American oak, and this is a single pot still whiskey in a first fill American oak, and this is 2002.
Can I just ask, Kevin, would the B1s, would the first fill barrels feature quite frequently in Midleton Very Rare, or would it be case by case?
We look at it every year, Joe, so we can change the proportion every year depending on what we're looking for. But suffice to say, every year there's a good generous slug of B1 barrels, which gives it that sort of, you know, vanilla toffee and toasted oak, which we're looking for as well. So it depends on the year, to be honest. Okay. So just the pot still, and again, maybe just compare it to the grain. You can see the pot still. This is a medium style pot still whiskey. So in Midleton, we can produce lighter style, medium style, and heavier style. This is towards a medium style single pot still. It's quite, you know, robust. There's lots of, I suppose, ripe fruit. There's a bit of
fruitier, I think, or much more orchard fruit than
the
first sample.
It's kind of ripe fruit, orchard fruits, bit of apple, touch of banana. And again, it's quite spicy. If you compare it to the grain sample, the spiciness, which is typical of single pot still whiskies, shines through on this pot sample. It's just a little, you know, it's more spicy.
So layered and complex, though, isn't it? You know, you kind of delve into it a little bit, and you're getting those kind of notes revealing themselves, and you know, you go back to it, and then there's something else revealing itself, which, you know, I suppose showcases the complexity, especially when it's got such a year, you know, an age on it. It's got a big story to tell, you know.
It's interesting the difference between the two, which are both B1s, but on the grain component, I get so much more wood immediately coming across. Yeah,
and I suppose the reason for that, Joe, is that, you know, the grain whiskey is a lot more delicate and has a bit more finesse. So therefore, the oak influence, i.e. vanilla, toffee, caramel, shines through more on the grain than it does on the pot, because it's more a delicate whiskey.
Would that present challenges then? I'm just thinking for, you know, maturing, because it obviously takes the wood so quickly or so much more. Would that make grain whiskies a little bit more challenging to mature?
Not really. I mean, it's all about balance, because, you know, the whole reason for blending is that it's a combination of different types of casks and different types of whiskies. So, you know, if you want to maybe pull back on the wood contribution, you'll pull back on the what we call first fills, and you might add some B2s and B3s. Or if you want to push and forward the whiskey in terms of wood, you'll add more B1s. So it's all about balance of what you're looking for.